Ruthie was one of those who came and joined us early on when we moved into this building and was never frightened by moving from her village in England to this place, and has accomplished great things. And she truly does have the call to the city, and God has done miraculous things through her, so I can't wait till you hear her stories because they're amazing.
Well, yeah, my journey started about 18 years ago when I walked through those doors as a DTS student. I know I don't look that old, right guys? But 18 years ago, I walked through those doors. I come from a village. I can't agree with Laurie. I was actually terrified. I came to San Francisco because God had clearly called me, and I don't have time to explain all of that today, but I walked through the doors and I thought to myself, I've made the biggest mistake of my life. And you know, it's so funny, faith is often like that, right? You take a step of faith and then when you throw yourself off the cliff, you think, oh my gosh, what have I done? But then you're just free falling. And I'm so glad that I came. I'm so glad that I got to come and join this ministry. I feel so privileged. You know, it's funny, Laurie and I, we didn't really know what each other were going to talk about. But what I wanted to say was when I came into this ministry, what I saw were women who were leading. I saw that women, they were crazy. Like, there's so many stories that Laurie could share that I kind of grew up, and my whole adult life, I've been working here, that I heard and I thought, these women are crazy, and I want to be crazy like them. And what happened was this space, like she said, it kind of became this launching pad for my life personally, for the ministry that I've gone on to develop and birth, but for hundreds of students and staff and interns that have come in here and stepped into an atmosphere where we talk about the impossible like it's possible. Like we talk about, you're a young woman who's 18 from a village, here, go lead this. And I was like, really? You trust me with that? Sure. And so that's kind of what this building and this ministry represents for me. You know, over the years, I've changed a lot. I have had many different hairstyles. One of them was very short and cropped in pink. I'm really glad we don't have any photos of those. So I've changed over the years. I got married, I've had kids. But you know what? San Francisco has changed me. And some people might say, oh, well, that doesn't sound good. To me, it's a gift. I feel changed by the city in the best of ways. I feel like the people that I have met here, their stories, their lives have impacted me. They've experienced things I will never experience. I've learned from their life. It has been a gift to interact with all the people that have come through this ministry, all the people that we've met and we've done ministry alongside. I was remembering a few of the stories and people that I've met. I was thinking about all of the students that have come through here. I used to staff our DTS for almost a decade and work with a lot of students, and have sent some of those students that were trained here to Vietnam, to China, to Thailand, all around the world to be long-term missionaries, and they started here in this building. I think about the woman that I met at a YWAM conference, who was a YWAMer, this is many years back, and she told me about her life being caught up in the sex industry on this block of Ellis Street. And she said, you know, it's so good to meet you because I used to stand outside on the street and I used to look up at your sign, YWAM San Francisco, and I thought, I can change my life. And she changed her life. She got out of prostitution, and she became a YWAMer. And I thought, it was just a sign. I said, did you ever meet any of our staff? And she said, I don't think so, I just saw the sign. I just thought, oh my gosh, God does this crazy things. All of these stories for me are mingled together. And I think one of the things that I learned, or have learned being here, is sometimes the most beautiful things happen right next to the most painful things. And God is in absolutely all of it. Jesus is present in absolutely all of it. The building next door, some of you may have had a tour, but the building right here used to be one of the most prominent sex clubs in San Francisco. When I moved in here, it still very much was. I'd see people come and go, and yet we felt like God called us to have that space too. And it's funny, isn't it, how you think you're believing God for big things, and then he's like, actually, I want you to believe me for even more. And so I remember we used to come here, and we used to literally lay our hands on this wall and pray and say, God, we believe you promised us that space, and we don't know how it's going to happen. And we prayed that for years and years and years. And you know, sometimes when God calls us to things, like, it's not immediate. And we want it to happen. We want to see the success. We want to see the breakthrough. And that's another thing I've learned here in San Francisco. It's usually not the quick fix. It's usually just the faithful being present. Sometimes God shows up because people have just stayed. Because they've pressed in and they've said, you know what, I'm going to be here. Even if I don't see the crazy, miraculous stuff, I'm going to stay. And then God is just so faithful. I remember when we took over that space next door and we cleaned it, and then we cleaned it again, and again, and again. And I remember the walls were painted really dark red, and it took like 7 coats of paint. But it was a privilege to be part of renovating that, because that space that used to be a sex club is now where we train missionaries. Our DTS classroom is over there. That is insanely crazy. Like, that is the redemptive heart of God, that he would take this place that's so dark and so like out there and say, you know what, where do I want to train missionaries to send to Asia and Europe and around the world? I'm going to take a sex club and I'm going to give it to a bunch of like crazy YWAM kids who are going to scrub the walls and say, what could we do with this space? That's the kind of crazy stuff that God does here in San Francisco and at YWAM. But the funny thing is that I've seen in my life, you know, I was asked to talk about establishing, I was reflecting on my life here and thinking about that as God has extended us and called us to be established and really to put roots down and dig deep, whether it be having new properties or getting involved in people's lives or just like planting in new neighborhoods, whatever that kind of looked like to establish, he didn't do that without doing a work in our hearts first. And I think that's the thing about God. He never just says, hey, I want you to just go work for me. Just get this stuff done. He's always about increasing our capacity, our ability to receive his love, so that when he calls us to the next thing, it's like, oh yeah, I can step into that because God's established himself in us. And then we spread out from that place. I remember one of the first things I learned here from Laurie and Pat, some of the other leaders, is ministry flows out of who you are. Like the staff that you see here today, they're here because God has done something in their life. They're here because God's transformed them, and that's the beautiful thing about God. He's interested in us, and then so we can go reach the world. So I really consider myself privileged to have been here and to be part of this story. I'm looking towards the future for YWAM San Francisco and thinking, God, you have more because you don't change. So this is amazing history, and I love it, and we can celebrate it, but let's also think, gosh, like what's he going to do next? It's only going to be better.